Welcome to The Forge Focus, a podcast through The Forge, where we focus on our mission of enhancing manhood through our three pillars of positive imagery, quality fellowship, and service to others. These three pillars were created to help fight toxic masculinity and promote a healthy aspect of manhood. Here we will have personal discussions with men in the community and beyond who exemplify this mission and can share their experiences and perspectives in efforts to make us all just a little better than we were before listening in. I mean, hey, let's face it, we can all learn from each other, right? And now, your host, Ebony McNeil. Prepare to be forged.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Ebony from the Forge Focus podcast. We are here right now at episode 11, I believe. And thank you guys for always paying attention and following us this whole time. So today, I want to talk to a person I look up to, a man I met a few years ago at a marriage conference, and just hearing him speak really intrigued me and engaged me. And as we've talked and become friends, it's even grown. So this man is a marriage and individual counselor. Also, he is a licensed pastor. Also, he's right now diving into his PhD. So he's got some stuff with him. So when you listen to him talk, you got to pay attention. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about something that's very important, especially for us men here at The Forge, is our relationships and men's perspective on that. So I'm going to dive right in here and introduce my friend Don Beale.
Hey, brother. Hey, man. Hey, first of all, I just want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to come up here and the dialogue. I've been seeing everything that you've been doing, everything online, and truly it's been a blessing to see everything that you're doing and how you really impacting a lot of people. So I want to thank you for your work, and I want to thank you for your drive and your passion to be able to help other brothers, because we need it out here. I mean, that's we need it. You know what I mean? I'm not as perfect as you are, but I know I need it. So I just
perfect. Man, look, I do what I do because I know I ain't perfect. So I figure if I'm struggling, somebody else is struggling too.
Absolutely. So I just want to applaud you and thank you so much, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you for being here. So let's jump right in and let the listeners know a little bit about yourself. So explain to them. I mean, I know how I met you, and I know some of your story previous to that, especially as deep as you got at that conference. But I want you to explain to them who you are, what led you to become a counselor, what led you to strive to, for your PhD. Talk to them a little bit.
So my name is Don Beale. I'm from Philadelphia, PA. Shouts out to the 8-1 Philadelphia Eagles, the best team in the National Football League at this moment. I just had to plug again. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Fly Eagles fly.
Fly Eagles fly all day. So I'm from Philadelphia, born and raised. Been there. Actually, I want to pause on that. I don't want to say raised, but I was born there, and my earliest stage, I was there up until about the age of 6. I came into a family where a single mother who basically raised me, and so she went into the military. And so when she went into the military, I stayed at home with my grandmother for the first 5-6 years of my life. And so then after that, we left, and so we then moved, and I traveled the world with my mom, being a military brat, as they always call. Went from Germany to Louisiana to Georgia, went around and was able to learn about different cultures during that time. I didn't realize how much it was going to be an impact into my life until I got older. My mother did get married, and so things didn't work out. And so after the marriage, we then came back to Philly. And so we was in Philly. I'm back home in Philadelphia, staying with my grandmother. Came back approximately around the age of 13. And that was a trying time for me, obviously, because when you are living in other places and then you come back to hometown, people start to see you being a little bit different. We used to call it corny.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I was the corny guy. So it took me a long time to get acclimated to being back home. And so once I got acclimated to being back home, of course, I grew into who I am right now. One of the things that I was taught, and this is all going to come together in a minute, but one of the things that I was taught growing up is that the most important relationship that you can ever have is family. Plain and simple.
Period.
Family is I look at family as a system. And so what I mean by that is that it is a system that is basically put together that you pretty much drafted into. You have no say about it. And you're drafted into it when you first come into this world. And so when you first come into this world, you get drafted into this family, into this system. And that's how you begin to learn about who you are. You learn your characteristics, you learn your personality, your likes, your dislikes. Well, when I was brought into that system by family, I begin to learn about the importance of marriage, because from family, you then begin to develop your own family. Most people learn it through marriage. And so I grew up and I was a troubled teen, just like anybody else. But I always had a sense of a respect for the marriage. Always, because I was always taught that. Always had a sense of respect for the marriage. And so time went on. And so I met the woman of my life. We now celebrated 21 years.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. 21 years and she's tolerated me. So 21 years. And so I met the woman of my life. And so through that, I begin to, as I said, always had a passion for it, but we begin to really see that there's an urgency and a need that people really need help with marriage. The truth of the matter is this. When I first got married, the first thing that I learned when I went to counseling was this, that on average, most marriages don't last past 7 years. Most of them do not.
I've heard that. And it's, they got the 7-year itch, and it feels like it's almost self-fulfilling, because everybody I hear that actually soaks that in starts having problem around 7 years. It's kind of weird.
Absolutely. Because the thing is that we come in, all of it, we're made and we're selfish. And so we come in and we have our own personal mindset, and we're very selfish about who we are, and we want to keep that. And so marriage basically puts you in a position where you have to sacrifice. And so if you continue to fight against the sacrifice, on the average, it takes 7 years. And if you make it past the 7, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed, but if you make it past the 7, you must be doing okay, because now you're starting where 2 is really becoming 1. So
it's like a real thing. That's not just, 7 years is like a general number. Like there's actually, it takes about 7 years for you to almost die to yourself and become the version of yourself you need for this marriage. Is that what you're saying? It actually is about 7 years?
If you really think about it, think about it this way, we pretty much change as individuals every 7 years. That's an average. We really do. We change as individuals as every 7 years. And that's whether you are married or not married. So if you, ideally in a marriage, if you make it to the 7-year mark,
okay,
then at that point, then that means you're ready to then transition. Because when we first got married, I was still, all of us for the most part, we thought that we can basically still live life the same way that we were when we were single. Minus, of course, the females.
Right.
but well, some of us. But anyway, that's another story. But we still try to keep the same mindset. We want to keep things the exact same way. And we kind of fight. And we fight to try to keep that individuality. Usually when you hit about a 7 mark, you start to realize that, you know what, that things start to begin to change.
Okay.
And so with myself, going back to your original question about the getting into marriage counseling, when I got married, specifically when I got married, that one particular year, there was 13 people that got married, 13 other couples that got married. After about 10 years, only 3 of them stayed married.
Wow.
We're now in the 21st year, and we only know of 2 that stayed married.
Damn.
Myself and this other couple. And so that was alarming to us, because we start to realize, that married people need married people. Because
talk about that, man. Look, soundbite. Go ahead.
We need each other because we start to understand each other. We start to understand. Listen, you understand when you understand me. If I called you when my wife pissed me off and I got to take a ride.
Facts. That's the best person to call.
Absolutely. And so we started to see that there's a need and there's an urgency to be able to help each other out. And so that's where the beginning part, or the second phase, if you will, the beginning really happened when I was younger, but the second phase really I begin to see that there is a need for marriage counseling.
Man, look, you hit something on the head right there. One thing we talk about at the Forge is quality fellowship. It's our second pillar. And we talk about what makes the fellowship quality is what you get out of that conversation, what you get out of that fellowship. And like you said, one thing we stress is you need somebody who's on the even field with you to help you grow. So like you said, married people need married people. If I'm going through something, my wife, it's dumb for me to call a single friend because what he's going to recommend probably ain't going to help the situation
Absolutely.
at all.
Absolutely.
So it was interesting that you said that because I know that some people still argue, I can still be with my friends. I can still do this. You can still be friends with them, but it's going to be, you have to understand where they fit in. You can't ask them for opinions, advice, etc. on things that don't relate to them because they're not going to be able to give you the right answer.
Yeah, I'm not going to go talk to my single buddy about my wife.
Right.
No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I know him and I love him, but he's single. And he's not going to understand the struggles that I got to deal with.
Facts.
He's not going to understand that. So there's a line that has to be established where we still friends, we still good, but in certain capacities, you can't get into this type of conversation.
Agreed.
I remember when I was growing up, one of the things when I was growing up, and you can probably relate to this, is that when you was children and when the grown folks got to talking, you may have been in the room, but you could sit there and listen, but they also gave you that look, and that look basically meant this: it's time for you to go.
Yep.
Because even though you're a human just like I am, you can't relate to this conversation.
Correct.
So it's time for you to be removed.
Yep.
And so such is the same thing that happens with some of our single brothers and single brothers for that matter. That we have them around and we still keep the relationship, but the relationship has changed. The dynamic has changed.
Gotcha. So do you think that's sometimes why people in a marriage or in a relationship, it gets a bad rap sometimes because it's, you change or what, we can't be friends anymore. Because you have to adjust your surroundings if you want your marriage to survive. You have to. Do you think that's why a lot of times, sometimes people, I ain't getting married. You ain't changing me. I ain't giving nothing up. Because you do have to make those changes. No matter what we say, you could still be you. We could still be friends. You do have to change. You think it gets a negative connotation for that?
Absolutely. I believe in individuality. We got to have our own, we got to be our own person because who we are is what attracted us to our spouses.
Correct.
They love that. However, individuality has limitations.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so you can't expect, and let's be honest, you can't expect to be living like you're a single man and expect for your wife to approve of it.
Nah, not at all.
And vice versa.
Facts.
I mean, if your wife was going out with with the single girlfriends all the time, you would end up having a problem.
Oh yeah.
And you wouldn't have a problem not because of the fact she went out, but it's who she went out with. Because at this particular point in your life, you have now said that I'm willing to make changes.
Yes.
And so the struggle a lot of times with couples that I end up meeting with, the biggest struggle that they have, the struggle is that they have to be willing to sacrifice. And sacrifice is a hard word.
So when you say the biggest, you got me intrigued now. So when you say the biggest struggle is them having to sacrifice, what seems to be the biggest sacrifice that they struggle with? What seems to be the biggest thing that they're not willing to let go of?
That's a good question. I would say being willing to let go of just being who you are, just as a whole. It's just really as a whole. You can't, how can I put it? You can't say that I'm gonna, as you used to, if you're a gentleman who you used to going out 6-7 times a week when you're single, you can't continue to say, I'm going to do the exact same thing in your marriage and expect to have a quality marriage. You just can't do it. It's not going to work, because the thing is that she had certain expectations for you. And when she gave her heart to you, one of the expectations that she gave is that you would be willing to be not say everything, but that she wanted you to be there so that you can basically show her love. One of the ways of showing love is time. And so you can't expect to be doing the exact same thing, living the exact same way, and think you're going to get good results.
Well, I guess my confusion comes in is that if you are in that relationship or in that marriage, shouldn't your desire to be out 6-7 days a week naturally dissipate anyway? Because you should be wanting to spend most of that 6-7 nights with your person. Maybe that's me. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah, when you're young, you still want to go out, but you can't tell me, if I'm asking you to marry me, that I still need to be out in those streets, because of the simple fact that same amount of time I should be wanting to be with you. Is that?
I answer that with a question. Why would you want to? I mean, let's be honest. If you said that this woman is your queen,
right?
If you said that this is a jewel, why would you even want to be outside?
That's what I'm saying. Like, why are they? That to me almost shouldn't be a struggle. I should want to be with you versus being in the streets. So does that mean I'm not really committed the way I should be? Or does that mean that maybe there's something missing at home that I need to get fulfilled out in the streets?
You hit it. And this is why I always stress to couples the importance of getting premarital counseling. This is why right here.
Yeah.
You just nailed it. Because the premarital counseling is really not going to show me, but it's going to show you, and it's going to show that spouse, that woman that is about to give her heart to you, if you're really ready for this. And sometimes what ends up happening, they start to realize, it doesn't mean that they don't love them, but they start to realize they're not really ready to sacrifice to that magnitude.
Okay.
That's the main thing. Because when you start to get that taken care of, when you start doing premarital counseling, you will really start to see how dedicated you are to this.
True story, because you're going to have to examine a lot of things. Well, hopefully you're going to bring up things that make them examine it, so they're not just going in blind. They're not just going in based off the what the notion is. Oh, I should get married. It's been a certain amount of time. We both make a certain amount of money. Like, hopefully they're going in for the right reason. So something you just said about premarital counseling, I want to talk about that a little more in depth. So we're going to unpack that next. So we just mentioned that premarital counseling will hopefully make you see if you're really ready for this thing. Mm-hmm. So what do you see as a lot of red flags that come in the door? So when people come in, right now it's a big thing out in the world, society especially. I know a lot of podcasts I also listen to, we talk about they talk about relationships, and they talk about people ignoring these red flags, and they talk about what men are looking for versus what women are looking for, and who's right, who's wrong. What are some of the things you've seen? Give me an example or two of, you see a couple walk in the door and a red flag that you can see that maybe they haven't recognized, where you say, ooh, this may not work. Mm-hmm. Give me an example of some of the stuff you see.
So it's funny that you asked that. Most of the time, when somebody calls me for some premarital counseling, the majority of the time, it's the female. I'm used to that, because as men, we don't like to tell nobody our business. And so you have this woman, she now calls up. My wife is great with the administrative stuff. That is not my gift. So I pass her over to her. And so they begin to have a dialogue. And so now premarital counseling is now set up. when that is usually set up, if the first session starts when it's just her, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. Because what that basically means is that even if the groom in this case is not particularly ready for this, he's already fighting up against something that's really going to help him out. And so sometimes, you know how it is being married, sometimes we have to go places or do some things that our wives don't like. And so even though they tell us to go to these places, you know, we don't sit there and say flat out no. We go ahead and do it for the sake of the peace. Such as the same thing with the premarital counseling. If that woman shows up and he's not there, that's a red flag.
Okay, so it's funny because when I hear that, it still, you know, substantiates the whole thing where they say, oh, the women want this and men are the problem. But, you know, I've been paying attention a little more, and it seems like sometimes the men, the women are looking at the wrong men. You know, they're looking at, they're picking the guys for certain criteria and not even realize that sometimes this man's letting you know he wouldn't go to that counseling, things like that, where maybe they should be looking at the men who really want to work on that type of relationship, because everybody doesn't. But then again, the women are looking at the wrong thing. Maybe they're looking at the guy who makes the money, looks the best, is charismatic out in the streets, whatever. But he's shown you in several different ways, he's not giving you the effort to make that relationship stronger. So how many times have you seen it where you see that red flag, eventually the guy comes, but they're still struggling?
Most of the time.
Most of the time it continues?
I do. Most of the time. And I'll be honest with you, man. Depending on who it is, when we finish our counseling, I usually say it in the back of my mind, or I may say it to my wife, I'll probably see them in about another 2 or 3 years. Because I already see the pattern already if he's fighting up against the change, or vice versa. I don't want to just pick on the men, or vice versa. Even if she's fighting, because I've seen that as well. Even if I've seen where the spouse is fighting up against and not really listening to what the man is desiring and what he's expecting, I can always say in the back of my mind, they'll be back in a couple years. Either they're going to come back and they're going to be fighting this same battle, or they're going to come back and they're going to say, we thank you so much because we actually heard what you were saying.
Whew, I'm chomping at the bit. You hit something. So I'm glad you switched that and said you went from it just being the guy who doesn't want to do it, etc. You went into the spouse who's fighting back.
Yes.
On a ratio amount, give me a generic number. How often is it where the guy's the one who wants the counseling, the guy's the one who wants to get better, he wants to go into the marriage the right way, and it's the female who doesn't?
I would say it's about 50%.
What?
Yeah,
50%.
Absolutely.
I mean, I got to back my brothers, but I didn't expect it to be 50%. I thought we might get a good 30.
Oh no, I've had about 50%, and most of those individuals who have done it, that I've seen, were either married before, they also understand the importance of marriage, or they just really got their stuff together. Let's be honest, some of us as men, when we first go to get married, we really don't have our stuff together like that. And what I mean by that is that we're not administratively intact. Okay. Per se. I know I wasn't. Listen, I was, my wife, when I first got married, my wife had 2 jobs. I lost 2 jobs and I had 0. Okay.
She went up 2, you went down 2.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. So I wasn't together, but there are some brothers who are together and they got it all together. And it's funny because those individuals who got their stuff together, the spouse was on the opposite side of the pendulum, where they really, they were great, they good women, but they wasn't as, if you will, polished and like the man was.
You know what's funny when you say that? That triggers a thought, and things have been going through my head in the past. You know, I hear a lot of people, how how can I put this? Lately, it seems that women have all these qualifications for the men. We got making this amount of money. I want a man who's this. I want a man who's that. And it could be very good qualifications. But what's funny is, this is very true. Men, we don't look for that in a woman. I believe women want the finished product. They want the guy who has things together. His money's okay. He ain't got to be paid, but his money's okay. He's on piece of paper. He looks good.
Yeah.
They're not going to holler at the dude who's making fries. They're not going to talk. They're not going to accept the advances from the dude who's dumping the trash, who's the janitor. Men, on the other hand, even if we have all our stuff together, I don't feel we judge women on those same criteria. I feel men feel, okay, I want her for how she can make me feel, whether it be physically, emotionally, and we're going to go into that later.
Sure.
But her income isn't as important to me. Obviously, you want somebody making a decent amount of money because that shows maybe where they're at in their status. But a guy will see somebody making fries and be like, you know what? I can take her on and fix her. Or not even fix her, but polish her up, like you said.
Yeah.
Why is that? Let's go outside of the council. I want your opinion on that. Why is it that men are willing to do that where women, especially the women who do got it going on, women got it going on won't want that out of a man, but a man will still take a woman who, for lack of a better word, is in a less status than him.
So here's the reality. The reality is this. Statistics show this. Most women in today's world make much more money than men, period.
Yes.
That's the way things are set up. It's not always because of the fact that the man had a terrible background, because he was in jail, because he didn't go to school. It doesn't have anything to do with that. This is the way society has things. And that's fine. But you know why, to answer your question, why the men don't mind about those things? Because there's one thing that a man desires, and it doesn't matter what type of money what type of money that woman is making. It's the one thing the man desires and the man expects: respect.
Talk, man. Listen, go ahead. You got me worked up.
If you respect me as a man, you got me. Plain and simple. Now, the other part to it is this: is that the gentleman who's making the fries and now wants to talk to, if you will, the woman who's let's say, the attorney for the conversation. If he understands his value, he's not going to allow the position that he's in to minimize him or to prevent him from talking to the woman.
But will him understanding his own value, will that matter to her understanding his value?
If she understands the importance of giving respect, absolutely.
But can she respect him if he's making fries and she's making $200K?
Well, the other word is this: potential. If she sees that there's some potential in that man, that he wants to be better, not for them, but for himself, she would be willing to go ahead and invest into him.
I like that. And I agree. I just wanted to get your take on that. It's funny when you said what matters number one to a man is respect. I agree with that 1,000% because, I've listened to other, again, you listen to people, you listen to the experts. And one thing that I've always heard that really makes sense to me is, men, we interpret respect as love.
Absolutely.
We need to know that you value us, our opinion, that you don't need to worship us at all. But I need to know that if I say, hey, I'd like to do this and here's why, even if we don't do it the way I said, you respected me enough to hear me out. You expected me enough to consider it, or you respect me enough to make sure that I am the priority in your life. And again, it doesn't mean you bow to me, but I do realize that men, we interpret respect that way. But see, this is my question. And I've had conversations about this. Is that why a man will take a woman who is, again, of lesser status at the time, because she will see him in a certain way that makes him feel more respected because there's no competition there.
It's the responsibility of the man, a real man, to show that woman love. Because just as much as the man expects to receive respect, it's his responsibility to show her love. And love has nothing to do with the fact of, it doesn't have to do with the fact of her status. If she's a lesser status or a higher status, she comes into a relationship expecting for her man to show her love. And showing her love is not a dictatorship or authoritative. Love is basically saying that I appreciate you and I value you and I value everything that you say and I value everything that you do for me. One of the things I tell people this all the time. I'm always in a posture for 21 years. I've always been in a posture of studying my wife. I study her, and I study her because I need to know everything about her to make her feel appreciated. And so that's part of love. When a woman feels that sense of love, then they would give the man the world.
So in that sense, the number one need for men is respect. The number one need for women is love. Do you think that's a lot of why there's still this big disconnect? Because one is looking for it. Women are expecting men to show love, which isn't how we're not wired that way initially. We have to figure that out. And men want that respect, and women are trying to give him love.
You know how you love somebody when you're willing to do what you're not used to doing.
Yes.
That's marriage.
Facts.
And there's that key word again, sacrifice. Because marriage would challenge you to come out of your comfort zone from living the normal life that you're used to doing something for somebody else. As you know, I'm a minister, and so I pray. And so my sacrifice is this: I pray more for my wife than I pray for myself. Now I got a whole list I can go to God with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I put mine to the side for the sake of her, because she's important to me. That's the beauty of marriage. And that's where a lot of marriages don't make it. Because again, when you're trying to continue to do things the same way that you've been used to doing it, you're going to come up with poor results.
So, wow, that was deep. You know, I based off what you said, one thing when I say it, you love something, you ain't willing to lose it, and you protect it.
Absolutely.
And that's why when I hear people get in these situations where they're risking losing things, losing that person, do you think that means they really don't love them, or do you just think that they're human and messed up?
I'm under the belief that a person can still love somebody. I believe that. But I'm also under the belief that a person can live in a state of selfishness.
Even if they love somebody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you can love somebody else, but the question is that how important is that person to you? Because if that person is that important to you, you're going to do, like you said earlier, you're going to do whatever you can in order to make it work. This is when you go to the altar. And people got to understand this. When you go to the altar on that beautiful wedding day, when you done spent all this money and all this stuff, and everybody's up there, and you go to say them vows, you're technically not saying them vows to her. You're not saying them as a promise to her, because the reality is this: in the right or the wrong situation, we can easily break promises. We can alter promises all day. But really, what you're doing is that you're making a public covenant to God. Because that's his child, that's his daughter. And you said that you're going to do this for her because that's his child. Now you take marriage on a whole different perspective, because the reality is that we're not perfect. We're not going to do things right. But if you're serious about trying to please God, and if you're serious about trying to keep him in the center of your marriage, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have bumpy moments. You're going to have tough times, but the tough times is there to make you guys stronger.
Okay. So when you mentioned making God the center of a relationship, how does that work when you hear about these strong Christian couples and somebody still messes up? Mm-hmm. Was it because their desire for whatever they messed up doing, their desire to please God wasn't stronger than that?
So the reality is this, and when you take time to look at the Bible, the first family that was planted on this earth was Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve was the center. They were the nucleus of the earth. And they was the first example, if you will, of marriage. And so if you know the story about Adam and Eve, they was on earth, but then out of nowhere, here comes this serpent. Well, the serpent was there in order to destroy the marriage.
Yes.
And so the serpent came to destroy the marriage. And so the marriage, if you know the story, was not destroyed, but now is facing conflict. And part of the conflict that the marriage is now face is the fact that there's this constant struggle that's always going on in the marriage. So to answer your question, it doesn't mean that you don't love the person. It doesn't mean that they don't trust God. But we have to also acknowledge the fact that Satan, as the Bible says, is like a roaring lion seeking who he may devour. And so he's out to destroy the marriage. The marriage is the most hated thing on his agenda.
It's funny. I heard that a few different times and I never thought about it years ago, but I do. I feel like if there's one thing that the devil can do to have a huge negative impact on quite a few people, it's mess up a good marriage, because then you're affecting the kids, you're affecting that both people in the relationship, you're affecting the people they may use to hurt each other, you're affecting what they may do out in the commercial, out in the world. So I do have some things I want to ask you. We're going to get a little nitty gritty here. We're going to get a little dirty with this next one. We're going to dive right in. Okay. So you had mentioned that respect is a man's number one need.
Absolutely.
I'm going to expand on that a little bit. What about physical touch, affection, and sex? Let's just be real. Mm-hmm. Because that is a lot of men's love language.
Yeah, man.
Primarily, I read the book, The 5 Love Languages, and then I did some studies about it, read some articles, and it said that the majority of men, that's their number one. Yeah. And I know myself, that's my number one.
Yes, sir.
And it's funny because when you mentioned the serpent was in the garden to destroy the marriage, it feels like obviously it knows Satan's cunning, so he knows what to do to destroy the marriage. So he knows what angles to attack at. And with men, it feels like if they're not getting their physical needs met, and it can be sex, it can just be affection, it can be feeling wanted, it can be compliments from your woman. What do you think about that? Because to me, that seems to be still why a lot of men stray. Now, there's some men who stray because they're not getting the other side of what they need, but it still feels like that physical affection is high impact. So what do you think about that and how that affects relationships?
Big time, man. Tremendously. Listen, when I first got married, one thing my wife knew from the get-go is that I'm a man and I'm visual. I see. And so I need to see beauty. I need to see sex appeal. I need that. That's very important. And so to me, when I told this to her, that basically means you need to keep your stuff together. Plain and simple. You got to keep it right because I need to see that. That's all part of the sexual cycle. The other part to it is this, to answer your question. one of the things that I think is very important is that there needs to be an open, constant dialogue in the marriage about your sex life. It's just plain and simple. It don't basically mean you come in some, yo, I need something. Now, I'm not saying it like that.
That's what I'm saying. How does that work? Go ahead.
But I think that the husband and wife should be able to open up and express what they like and how much they like. When I do premarital counseling, that's one of the things that I have that we go over. We talk about sex, and we talk about how much it is that man expects it, as well as how much the woman expects it, so that everything is put right in at the table, so that you are completely aware. Now, just because that man says I want sex 7 days a week doesn't mean he's going to automatically get it 7 days a week.
That ain't realistic.
That ain't realistic. But she is fully aware on how that is important to him, and it's important to the marriage. This is a way, intimacy, if you will, is a way of expressing love. And so I challenge the couple, if you're not willing to go into that area, how are you going to be able to express love? Now, there's a lot of things that can happen, whether it be in the marriage or before the marriage, that can bring problems to the bed. One of the common things that usually happens, and I'll just say, I can't even say this is even on the woman's side. It's in today's world, it's on the man's side too. But one of the things that can affect the bedroom is trauma.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that something traumatic happened in the person's life that is now causing some problems when it comes to sex.
Do you mean current trauma or past trauma?
It can be either or. Most of the time, for what I've seen, it was past trauma. And most of the time, that past trauma could have been that they was touched, that they was abused, that they was just something happened that now causes some problems in this area.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but I guess my question with that is, if it's past trauma, and sure, like you said with the communication, isn't that something that should have came up before they're even at the point of premarital counseling?
Absolutely.
Because to me, when you meet somebody, you understand, maybe not specifically, but you understand if you got a sexual person or not. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, if you're with somebody and they do want to get it in every time they see you, yeah, that changes over life. But that's you have a sexual person. That's a person who's sensual. If you know that, and you know, though, you have trauma that may keep you from being able to fulfill that need, isn't that something that should have come up even before you got to premarital? Because then maybe that person wouldn't even have asked you to marry them.
Absolutely. But this is where I want to challenge the brothers. I want to challenge the men with this, that can you still show love to this woman if this is something that's going on in her life? Because if you love her, you're going to love her even with all of that.
Agreed.
And we're going to work this thing out together. And even if when you love her, this is part of sacrifice, it's just the reality. If you love her, and even if you have these extreme sexual desires, can you accept the fact that if you desire to have it 7 days, that it may be cut down to 2? But we're going to work on this thing together.
So do you think then that maybe sometimes that's why, and we're just talking hypothetically, that's the man versus the woman, but do you think that's why the person hides? Maybe you're having sex with this person in the beginning a lot and you don't even want to, but you're doing it because you don't want to lose this person. But eventually that takes over. So now the veil's off. Now there's a problem. But like you said, if the man is, and I do believe that, if the man really loves this person, he's going to have to figure out a way to make it work. Yeah. That can't be the deciding factor.
Mm-hmm. You're a team. And when you get married, it's two different concepts. How I look at marriage. I look at marriage. Me and my wife, our marriage, we're business partners. So basically, we work. This is a business that we're establishing, but we're showing love, but we're working together. But not only that, but we're a team. And so when knowing about team, being a teammate supports another teammate. We work together to get the ultimate goal. So if she's coming in with these issues as the teammate or the business partner, I'm going to stand beside you. We're going to walk hand in hand in order for us to be able to make you feel fulfilled.
So do you think that falls under sacrifice? If a woman knows her man needs sex, and maybe when I say needs, it's obviously he may want it 6-7 days, but a need 3 days a week, 3 times a week. Do you think that's too much to ask for a woman to do?
If that's your desire, I don't think that's too much to ask for them to do, especially if we have that type of relationship. I mean, plain and simple. Now, if there's things that's coming up, you have to be realistic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're talking in real life. Yeah. And I don't mean 3 every other day. It can be, we got it in Monday, Tuesday, and didn't do it again until Friday. That's 3.
Yeah, that's 3. Yeah. You made the quota.
Yeah.
Check. That's it. We're not saying it like to that nature. I mean, you have to be realistic. I mean, come on. I mean, if she's working, I mean, just like you are, I mean, there's fatigue. There's life happens.
Yes.
And so you got to factor that in, and you can't be selfish and be like, oh, come on now, like we got to get this thing in. You have to be open to everything, because guess what? On the other side of the pendulum is this. And this is something that I think sometimes men need to talk about: our health. That time is going to come, if you're not taking care of yourself like you're supposed to, where your sex drive is affected. And the way things happen is that as we get older as men, our sex drive drops, but hers go up.
Facts. It's a known fact.
And so now, as you was getting mad because she wasn't meeting the quota, now it's the other way around.
And now you ain't meeting the quota.
Now you ain't meeting the quota.
But now with that, let's think about this. Do you think, we're all being real here. As you get older, like you said, I don't even know if your sex drive does go down.
Yes.
It's proven, testosterone and all that stuff. And not just your drive, but your ability changes.
Absolutely.
Your ability, what you used to do.
Yes, sir.
You used to be able to do it 4 times a week and rock it to sleep. Now,
that's right.
You may have to change a little bit. Do you think that affects men even worse because, how can I put this?
Plays on their manhood?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It plays on your manhood. You're like, dang, I used to be able to
yes, sir.
tear this thing down.
Yeah.
And now
triple Linden.
Yeah. I used to beat my chest afterwards. Yeah. Yeah. You get that space. I used to beat my chest. Now I just want to pull the blanket up.
Pull the blanket up. That's right.
I'm going to pull the blanket up and go to bed.
Call me.
Fact. Thumb in your mouth, right? That ain't me. But like, do you think that has a big effect? Because the man then, if he can't perform the way he used to, which may have set an expectation in the relationship, then what happens is he starts feeling some kind of way, which then translates into the libido going down for self-confidence. His libido, he'd rather almost not do it because he doesn't want to risk the embarrassment again.
I question this sometimes. If you realize that your sex life is going down, that your drive is going down, individualism, are you doing what you need to do for you? And what I mean by that is that, are you taking care of yourself? Are you exercising? Are you going to the doctor? Are you eating right? Now it's not for the sake of the sex, but in this case, it's for the sake of you. Because if you're willing to do this for yourself, then you're going to see the results in the bedroom. So you may not be tearing it down to 3 days like you used to, but you can go a hard 2.5 with no problem. And it's going to begin to show itself. The other part to it is this. I go back to my original statement. Conversation. If I'm married to you, we should be having these moments of dialogue. Babe, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. I got a hard 2.5, and this is what's going on. I can't do like I used to, blah, 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 blah.
You said, hold on. You said we got commercial break.
We got commercial break. Okay.
You said 2.5.
Okay.
Watch the joint on Hulu. 90 seconds for the commercials.
That's it.
Let's go, babe.
Let's go. That's it. But you should be able to have these type of dialogues with your spouse.
But can you? Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
How many men can say, look, babe, I'm having this problem, et cetera, even if she's okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an easy conversation to have.
Vulnerability is tough.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Being vulnerable is the hardest thing. But being vulnerable, not being vulnerable is what affects us. And it affects us as men, and it affects our marriages.
You know what's funny? I was listening to a podcast. I don't even remember who it was. And the gentleman was telling a story, and it was very similar. He stated that he started to have these issues. You know, he wasn't taking care of himself. Mm-hmm. He had gained a little weight. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. And he just couldn't do what he used to do. Mm-hmm. And he felt embarrassed. And then what occurred is, because he felt embarrassed, he pulled back from his wife. Mm-hmm. So then she was wondering what's going on. So now they had this weird tension that was there, but it was made in his imagination. Like, she wasn't mad. Mm-hmm. But because of that, it affected how he approached her for sex, how he showed affection to her, because he didn't want to even get riled up. But then he admitted that he went outside the marriage, mm-hmm. because the excitement of a new person gave him an extra boost. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, if he didn't perform for this person you don't really care about, it was no big deal. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's more common than people understand? Because when I listened to that, I was like, I bet you there's a lot of men out there who would rather go and give quickies to 10 different women than have that conversation with the woman they love, because they're worried about being vulnerable. And, a lot of times, let's be real, mm-hmm. women's tongues are a lot more powerful than anything else. So Absolutely. If you're scared to be vulnerable, because if they turn that on you, mm-hmm. woo, you can't really handle that. Yes, if she does turn it against you, mm-hmm. that's pain.
Spitting venom. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you think that affects a lot of marriages?
Absolutely. One of the things that all of us go through in life, and this is whether you're married or not, you get to a certain point and you start to wonder, do I still got it?
Yes.
Do I still got it? And so it gets validated when you have Rashida down the street. All of a sudden, now she wants to holler at you. And then she makes it even easier if she wants to holler at you and she knows about your situation.
Talk about it.
See, this is how Satan comes in.
Yep.
Because Satan makes everything very attractive, especially in this case, because he wants to destroy the marriage. And so at that particular point, we'll go through a cycle where we start to, if you will, rationalize the whole situation. Well, I can't get it like I want at home, or I'm not getting aroused by this, but I'm getting aroused by Rashida, who's giving me respect, mm-hmm. by saying all the right words, and visually she looks very well. And so now what ends up happening is that the one thing that the man is supposed to do, he doesn't do it. And that is, he cuts off the communication with his spouse. The communication line is so important. I'm not saying you're supposed to go back. I'm not condoning this, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying you're supposed to go back to her and be like, listen, I'm messing with Rashida now. I'm not saying that. But the majority of the time, when you look at the cycle, things begin to lessen more and more and more in terms of the communication line with the wife before Rashida comes on the scene. And
yeah.
when she does come on the scene, it is now completely cut off. Now communication is all negative. He's basically now giving back to her everything that's negative in order to make himself feel good and validate the fact this is why I need to be with Rashida.
Oh, you were hitting on something there. It's funny because I believe, like you said about Satan, one thing, and I've talked to people about this, me and H, me and Greg, me and my friends, just in general conversation, I've said, the devil literally will insert right at your weakest point. He doesn't just do it willy-nilly. Like, the devil will say, okay, I know this is a problem you're having, and I'm going to introduce something that's going to make that problem seem like the right way to go. But again, and we could talk about this all the time, but to me, when we're talking about manhood, it's all about self-control. H and I were having a great conversation about self-control the other day. And no matter what the situation is, as you mature into a man, I believe self-control is, like you said, you got to cut that conversation off. Instead of cutting it off with your wife, cut off with that other person.
Absolutely.
You got to be able to control yourself, knowing that this may come in and this could be a problem. And as a man, as you grow, you got to fix that. But unfortunately, Dom, I'm going to be honest with you, our time is up. This stinks because we could go for another 2 hours on this.
Brother.
Oh, and we're going to have a part 2.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you to make the drive and come back. We're going to have a part 2 because we only touched the surface of what we could touch.
Oh, yeah, we just barely touched it.
I just wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for blessing us with your knowledge and your experience.
I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you, man. I can't wait for part 2.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I can't wait, man.
All right. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed this last episode. If you have, please check back and check our previous episodes. Also, make sure you watch it, make sure you like it, and most importantly, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Here at The Forge Focus, we just want to make sure that we're sending out positive vibes and great information from men in the community who can affect it and affect society as a whole. So again, please stay tuned. We got some more great things coming up for you. Prepare to be forged.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and, more importantly, learned something that can affect your perspective on yourself and manhood as a whole. If you have found the value that we expect that you did, we encourage you to hit the like and subscribe button and share this video. Spread the word and tell anyone in your life who can benefit. We'll see you on the next episode. Prepare to be forged.